life is short. Buy more records. That's been the motto of Permanent Records since the inception back in 2006. My name's Lance. I'm the owner of Permanent Records, and I'm going to share with you just some of the records that we bought recently. Twice a year, we go on European record buying trips to get things that we can't seem to source very regularly here in the United States. We buy a lot of Krautrock, we buy a lot of prog, we buy a lot of experimental electronic music, Italo disco, all sorts of great stuff that just isn't very common in the US. We love traveling and we love buying records, and traveling to buy records is the best of both worlds. So we do that twice a year, and we palletize everything and wait for it to get back to the United States. And a pallet from our late 2023 record buying trip to Europe just landed recently. We have been running a bunch of the records that we bought over in Europe on Instagram already. That's mostly the let's call it the less exotic stuff. Lots of bread and butter staples in the mix, and lots of great records by bands like The Cure and The Smiths and you name it. Great stuff that we bought over there. Leonard Cohen, J.J. Cale, etc. Certain artists did better, sold more records in the UK and in Europe than they did in the US, and therefore they're more plentiful over there, and we go to buy them to bring them back to offer them up for sale for you, both in our store, the Permanent Records Roadhouse, which is a live music venue, a bar, and a record store, and on Instagram, where we sell somewhere between 50 and 100 records nightly. And we offer all kinds of different stuff, jazz, soul, funk, reggae, hip hop, obviously lots of rock music, and we got blues. We have every different type of genre. We got every different type of music, and all genres are represented. But that said, we get some pretty amazing stuff when we're overseas as well, and that's what this video is all about. So I'm gonna kind of rip through about a crate's worth of LPs and just kind of rattle off what I like about these kinds of records and why they're significant and why we like to buy them when we go on our record buying trips overseas. So without further ado, here we go. Ad Visser. This is a great electronic album that you just never see in the States. It's fairly plentiful overseas, and it is fantastic. I highly recommend checking this out if you're not familiar with it. It's not terribly expensive, even though it looks like it could be based on that album art. It's got striking album art, and it's loaded with synthesizers. It's kind of on the ambient tip, but it is propulsive and definitely worth listening to. Ad Visser, not a household name by any means, but we buy a fair amount of those when we're overseas. Unfortunately, I think that's the only one we got on this trip. Ange, this is a French prog band. European prog records don't come up for sale very often in the US. We like to pick up as many as we possibly can while we're overseas. We got French pop, Antoine, kind of an unsung hero of French music, at least in the US. Jacques Dutronc is a more well-known chanson, if you will, a French singer. And Antoine, I think his best material is right up there with Jacques Dutronc's catalog. I highly recommend checking out Antoine. Some of this stuff is a little garagey, some of it's kind of psychedelic, and there's some crunchy, kind of heavier numbers in the mix as well. This is a double LP compilation of some of his material. Really great place to start. As I mentioned earlier, we go overseas to buy as much Krautrock as we can. This is AR in the Machines, and the album title translates to The Green Journey. Look at that album cover. You gotta love that. So beautiful. And you just don't see these kinds of records stateside, rare krautrock. And we got one, not only one, but two copies of that same record. Again, if you like the proggier side of krautrock, check out AR, aka Achim Reichel. I'm probably terribly butchering that name. I did take German in high school, but I don't remember much of it. One thing I do like to do when I'm in Germany, or when I'm in Europe and I'm dealing with German dealers, is to speak what little bit of German that I do remember from high school. I think they find it charming. Maybe they don't. Maybe they think it's really gauche and I'm embarrassing myself. But I have a good time doing it, and I usually get a little smirk out of them at the very least. This is an obscure one. I honestly haven't had any time to research this yet. Looks rad. Has a pot leaf on the back. For sale from one of our favorite vendors over there. And the artist is Armand, and this album is called Rue de la Paix, Paix. I think that's French. Anyway, there you have it. Armand, another obscure European record. Ashra, also German, also krautrock. Ashra is formerly known as Ashra Temple, as Ashra moved on into the 70s. 3 copies of the Bell Alliance here. They got a little less experimental, a little less like kind of improv, jammy, which I like. I really do like all the Ashra Temple records, especially the first one. But this stuff is a little more fun, a little more accessible, a little dancier. And still very interesting. I highly recommend checking out any one of those Ashra records. Birth Control. This band rules. If you haven't heard Birth Control, you have to check them out. They're a German hard psych band. Kind of a bluesy rock thing, but also it gets heavy, of course, because we don't say hard psych without meaning heavy. And this is just one of their many LPs. This one's called Hoodoo Man. Pretty outrageous artwork going on there. That album is fantastic. More krautrock. This is a compilation on the Brain label. If you've not familiarized yourself with Brain records, now is the time to do so. Brain and Sky are 2 of the quintessential krautrock record labels. They did prog records also, and other genres. There's bluesy rock records, and there's ambient electronic records on both of those labels. But the labels are both known primarily, especially for the rarest kraut stuff that they have put out. By the way, quick side note, I don't know if German folks are offended by the term krautrock. I've heard sometimes they can be. I do not mean to offend anyone. I'm just using the kind of common nomenclature for the genre. Krautrock is a commonly used subgenre term when talking about German rock music from the late 60s and into the 70s. So again, if I'm offending anyone, please tell me in the comments below. I'll cut it out. I won't say that word anymore, but I'm gonna use it in this video for all intents and purposes. Anyway, Brain, the record label. This compilation has bands like Scorpions. Believe it or not, early Scorpions, a much different beast than the Scorpions that most Americans know from the 80s. Jane is on here. They're amazing. Noi, Harmonia, Guru, Novalis. Who else is on here? We got Klaus Schultz, Grobschnitt. Just a great cross-section of German music, as it says there, from 1972 to 1976. Brain Festival Essen. This is a compilation of recordings from presumably a festival that took place in Essen, Germany. And it has many of the same artists I just mentioned, but also includes Guru Guru, one of my favorite krautrock bands. Outside of Germany, music exists as well. Wow. Brainbox, they're a Dutch group, and this band rules. If you don't have any Brainbox records, I highly recommend checking this one out. This one, I believe, is a compilation of 2 different albums of theirs. And anyway, Brainbox is a hard rock, a bluesy hard rock band. You know, there's some prog and some psych elements as well, but Brainbox is worth your time. A full-length album of theirs that I would recommend checking out is this one here. I have a bunch of singles from Brainbox in my collection, and I used to DJ them regularly. Edgar Broughton Band. This is a UK power trio, and the album art from the Slaughterhouse on this self-titled album is a little disgusting to me as a vegetarian, but it's striking and makes you wonder what's happening here. Edgar Broughton Band is a hard and heavy power trio. The singer, this guy right here, Edgar, as you might have imagined, he sometimes cops a bit of a Muddy Waters, Captain Beefheart kind of growl to his voice. Love in the Rain is one of my favorite Edgar Broughton Band songs. It's on this album, Wassa Wassa. I believe this is their first one, and it's my favorite. You can watch an amazing live television performance of the song Love in the Rain. It has incredible visual effects on it. Do that after you watch this video, and then check out the entirety of Wassa Wassa and the rest of the Edgar Broughton Band's catalog. Fans of things like the Groundhogs, Taste, Rory Gallagher, that kind of vibe, are definitely going to want to check out Edgar Broughton. They rule. All right, those 2 were early pressings. This is a reissue. This is a little less expensive. These masterpiece reissues take the original artwork, shrink it down, and do some quote-unquote updated artwork. This is a good way to get some amazing albums with a lot less money. All right, and then here's last but not least a best of Edgar Broughton Band. You can't talk about krautrock without talking about Can. And when we go to Europe, we buy as many Can records as we can possibly get. The early Can albums are still very, very expensive, no matter where you go, and we rarely are able to buy them when we go overseas. But some of these later era ones, which I believe are just as good and a lot more accessible than the early, more experimental Can records, are still somewhat affordable overseas. You never see them stateside. People did not buy Can records by and large in the US back in the day, but they did in Germany. Germans love their krautrock, and it's obvious that we do too, because we buy as many as we can possibly get our hands on. Another thing I want to mention about these late era Can records is that even though they may not be as critically acclaimed as the earlier titles like Monster Movie or Tago Mago, they're really accessible, and maybe I'll make another video about this at some point, but they're definitely gateway drugs into the world of krautrock. They're really fun to listen to, pretty danceable, almost have like a disco or even reggae kind of vibe to them every once in a while. And that makes it a lot more soothing on Western ears, especially to people who don't get into especially experimental music and avant-garde stuff. So check out Saw Delight, check out Out of Reach. Flow Motion is really a fun listen. Here's a great one. Corporal Gander's Fire Dog Brigade presents On the Rocks. This is Corporal Gander's Fire Dog Brigade was not a real band. This is a studio project, almost like a library record in a sense. It's professional musicians who went on to be in a band called Wind, who did two very well-known Krautrock prog records in 1971 and 1972. Both of those records are quite expensive in the three-figure realm. And this record is incredibly heavy, hard psych, and obviously has a cover of Paranoid on it. It's got a couple of other covers. I can't remember which tracks. It's got Steeler on here, but it's mostly originals, and it's fantastic. This record kind of looks like something you would pick up on a whim, but you usually get burned on stuff like that. You would not get burned by picking up a copy of this. And again, this is a record that is fairly common in Germany and not very common in the US. So we get as many of these as we can when we're in Europe too. Moving right along. This, I believe, is an Italo disco record. I am not the expert of Italo disco at the shop. That delineation or distinction belongs to Tara, the GM. So we'll just cruise right past that one there. Deuter, this is a German ambient artist, and his records are very new agey and soothing, and definitely worth listening to if you get into that sort of thing. This group, however, is an EBM group. If you don't know what EBM is, it's short for electronic body music. And Deutsch Amerikanische Freundschaft, or DAF, is one of the progenitors of that genre. This is like proto-industrial music before there were bands like Nine Inch Nails and Ministry. Ministry are probably in the early days peers of DAF, but DAF were in on that vibe from very early on. Their records are almost all fantastic. They started off being quite experimental. They have a self-titled album that's got yellow and black artwork. I don't think we got one of those on this trip, but we do have one in the shop. And that record is almost like a cut and paste pastiche of experimentalism, very repetitive. It's a difficult listen for most people and isn't really representative of the rest of their catalog. This is the first album that came out after that self-titled record, but this is the first album that sounds more like the rest of their catalog. Gold and Liebe is one of the great DAF albums. They're almost always in really rough shape. These records got partied out, and this one's called Alles ist gut, which means all is good. And they got partied out, and they're almost always in really, really bad shape, but they almost always play pretty well, regardless of how bad they look. And Tara and I, grading is subjective, and Tara and I will, when we're on these buying trips, will jokingly say, that looks pretty Euro VG to me, because you'll see a grade written on an album jacket or something, or on a sticker on a poly bag that says VG, and it's like, wow, I don't know what world that is VG in, but it's not VG in our world, and we are very conservative graders. Here's another great Krautrock compilation. This one's called Deutschrock. This one has a really great entree into the Krautrock genre. There's prog and straight like motoric Krautrock on here. You got everything from Ihr Kinder, Night Sun, AR and the Machines makes an appearance on here. You got Epitaph, Out of Focus, Kin Ping Mei, Abacus, etc. Definitely more on the straight rock side than like the Noi Kraftwerk can vibe, but it is Krautrock nonetheless. This, I believe, or I know for sure, is an Italo disco single. It's called The Night. I don't know anything about Valerie Dorr, but if you don't know anything about Italo disco, but you like high energy dance music, you should definitely dig into Italo. There's a big, a vast well of that stuff in the world, and it is seemingly endless, and a lot of it is really fun. So anyway, here's Jacques Dutronc. I think I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about Antoine. Well, there's one of his albums, great French singer-songwriter, very also appealing to fans of garage rock and, you know, basically any type of music, because it's just, you know, eminently accessible. This band, Earth and Fire, no wind in this Earth and Fire. That's a terrible joke. This is a Dutch prog group. Earth and Fire did a few LPs. This is maybe the first. It's definitely one of the early ones, and definitely the best. It's called Song of the Marching Children. I've had a bunch of their singles in my collection for a long time. Again, I'm not an LP guy. I don't generally collect LPs, but unless they're very special to me. But I do have a bunch of their singles, so I highly recommend checking them out. Electric Food. This is a really interesting one. Again, kind of like the Corporal Gander record, this is a pseudonym for most of the people that were in Lucifer's Friend. Lucifer's Friend is a hard and heavy rock band from, you guessed it, Germany, and Electric Food, presumably also from Germany. That album cover just gets me every time, so sick. And this is not terribly dissimilar from Lucifer's Friend. Electric Food, I believe there's 2 Electric Food albums. They're both really good. Again, there's a bunch of covers on here. There's some originals. Starts off with the cover of Whole Lotta Love. You gotta peep out Electric Food when you get a chance. This is an Italo disco record I know well, Slice Me Nice. This is a classic of the genre. I believe that's the 12-inch single version of it. Frumpy, this is a female-fronted German hard rock band. If you like Bertha and Fanny and any hard rock music at all, female fronted or not, you got to check out Frumpy. This is a common series of compilations of singular artists. This one happens to be The Attention. There's a Black Sabbath, there's a Deep Purple, etc. This is the Frumpy comp. It's kind of like a best of Frumpy, if you will. And here's a little more Frumpy. This is called, this is the same Attention series, and this is called In and Out of Studios, which I assume means there is some live material on there. And we got not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of that we'll be putting out in the shop and up on Instagram as soon as we get them priced. All right, here's another Italo disco record, fun. The quintessential French artist, Serge Gainsbourg. I talked about the Melody Nelson record, the concept album about an illicit relationship between like an 11-year-old and a middle-aged man in a previous video. Well, Gainsbourg, an amazing artist. He is a controversial artist in some ways. Wrote a song called Lemon Incest, and, you know, was really pushing the envelope and just being really, really far out. And a lot of his tracks reflect that mentality. Gazebo, that's another Italo disco jam. Here's another Gazebo record. We like to get as much Italo as we can when we go overseas because we just don't see it that often here. German rock scene, what more do I need to say? There's a whole series of these, 1 through 6 at least. This is volume 3. As you can see, it has artists like Cluster, Ramses, Octopus, Michael Rother, or Michael Rother, depending on how you pronounce it. He's a founding member of founding member of Kraftwerk, a member of Neu, a member of Harmonia. Michael Rother is a major player in the Krautrock scene, and he's on this volume of the German rock scene. Here we have volume 2. This one has Birth Control, who I already mentioned, Message, who has an extremely valuable rare LP, Kin Ping Mei, Street Mark, etc. It goes on and on. Again, great gateway drugs into the world of Krautrock with these German rock scene comps. And we get a lot of them when we're overseas, and we bring them back just for you. So check those out, please. Here we go. This particular German rock scene comp has Amandul 2 on it. Interesting story behind Amandul and Amandul 2. I won't get into all of that in this particular video. Also, Michael Rother and Michael Rother, Satin Whale is a great German prog group, prog rock. They have expensive LPs as well. And yeah, like I said, just trying to help you get the best bang for your buck with these imports that we're bringing into the shop now. Maybe I'll have to do an edit right here. We'll see. I don't have a lot of time to make these videos, much less make a bunch of edits. So thank you. Thank you very much for bearing with me and understanding that I'm a hardworking gentleman and I do this for you and for the benefit of the community, and I don't have a whole lot of time to spend editing. So anyway, here we go. In DW, Neue Deutsche, well, that's German New Wave, basically. And this compilation right here is low power mode. This compilation right here has a bunch of the best NDW or German New Wave bands. You got Palais Schaumburg on here. You got Yellow and a bunch of others. Great place to start in another genre, or subgenre, I should say, of German music, the German New Wave. Here's German Rock Scene Volume 6. You don't see this one very often. It's got Mythos on it. It's got straight shooter Harold Grosskopf, who has an amazing album that I will get to here shortly. Here we got Goblin, the classic Italian prog band, Profondo Rosso, which I believe is the deep red, if in English. This is a soundtrack. Goblin did primarily soundtracks for primarily horror movies, primarily for made by Dario Argento, and this is one of them. These records are so hard to find. Any Goblin record in the US is not easy to come by, and we got, luckily, 2 copies of the Profondo Rosso soundtrack. They also did the soundtrack for Suspiria, which you may know them more for, or be more familiar with that film, at least anyway. Grauzone. If you like minimal synth or dark post-punk, Grauzone is for you. Grauzone is a Swiss band. They were from Switzerland, and yeah, this record is incredible. It's got their quote-unquote hit single. Wow, this doesn't have Ice Bear on it. I thought it did this whole time. It doesn't. But anyway, Ice Bear is a great Grauzone single, and this LP, their first, is fantastic. This is from 1980, I want to say 81, and I was correct. All right. Speaking of Harold Grosskopf, look at this guy. Why would you not buy this record just based on the cover? It looks like it's going to be good, and it is. This is a classic example of minimal synth stuff. You can't do any better when it comes to cold wave or minimal synth than a record like Synthesis by Harold Grosskopf. Harold Grosskopf also, just a major player in the krautrock scene. He's got History, and that's his, I believe, first solo album. Here's an oddball Johnny Halliday record. I haven't heard this yet. I don't think. I do like a lot of Johnny Halliday's stuff. He was kind of like a French Elvis in the early days, and then he got into the beat scene with like alongside Jacques Dutronc and Antoine. And this album looks to be from the later 70s, and I just bought it based on the cover. It may or may not be good, but we'll find out. And speaking of more French artists, we have a bunch of Francois Hardy compilations. These are all kind of greatest hits LPs, and there's quite a few of them. So I'll just rip and tear right through them. Yeah, if you like pop music in general, especially French pop music, and who doesn't, from the 60s, she's one of the greatest. And still more Francois Hardy. All right, so that concludes. We're running out of time here, folks. We don't want this video to go on for an hour. I do have plenty more records I could talk about, but we'll do that in another video. But before I say goodbye and bid you adieu, or say Auf Wiedersehen, as they do in Germany, I want to mention two quick things. First and foremost, as you know, Daniel from Riding Easy Records and I have been on a massive Southern rock kick. We have been almost weekly dropping Southern Private Press reissues on the digital streaming platforms, so you can stream them on Spotify and Apple Music, so on and so forth, on YouTube, Bandcamp, etc. Well, the latest is this rarity, Albatross from Virginia. This record from 1981 originally. It's called Rockin' the Sky, and this is a primo slice of American Southern rock. This one, unlike Haywire, for instance, this one gets hard and heavy, almost in more of a Molly Hatchet kind of direction, or the heavier side of Leonard Skinner. These guys at times border on sounding like a heavy metal band, but the album as a whole is Southern rock in its purest form. If you like Southern rock, you will love Albatross, and you can stream this right now. This record is extremely rare. I've never seen an OG of this in the wild. I was lucky enough to get one from one of the band members. I did not get any more than just this one copy. That's all that was available, and I am so proud to own it. This thing is a monster. Please check it out. If you dig Southern rock, you will love it. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this video and all the other videos that I've brought to YouTube over the course of the past couple months or so. I'm really stoked to be a part of this community, and I hope that you will do me the honor of clicking the subscribe button down below. Please give this video one of these, and leave me a comment too. I'd love to hear what you thought of this video and or any of the other ones that I've done. I'm having a great time doing these videos, and I really hope you're enjoying watching them, because that's why I do them. I do them for your enjoyment. But before I go, if you could tell, or if you have heard what I'm playing in the background, I might as well show you. This is what I've been doing in these videos as of late. I've been playing cassettes in the back. Cassettes are not a big part of my world, but they are a part of the record world, and you know, I dig them. This particular cassette that we've been listening to, this beautiful new age jam, is William Cobbett's Sacred Sinners. This cassette is not on Discogs. I couldn't find evidence of the fact that this tape exists at all on the internet, but here's proof that it does. It's just for your pleasure. So anyway, that's that. It ain't no pet pops, I know, but it's fun to find new music on outmoded media, and it's what I live for. So Until next time, I've been Lance Barisi, owner of Permanent Records, and we'll see you soon.